Red Bull is currently leading the race, but that doesn't guarantee their success forever. Christian Horner and his team need to sort things out soon, as they face challenges with Sergio Perez and the consequences of breaking the cost cap. Their future is uncertain, so let's watch this video to see how Red Bull is managing everything. But before we do that, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you like all things F1. Alright, now let's get back to the video. Lewis Hamilton believes it's time for his Mercedes team to start working on their 2024 contender. Throughout the year, the Silver Arrows have struggled to keep up, despite making some improvements with recent upgrades. They have a significant gap to close in order to catch up with the dominant Red Bull team. Damon Hill finds it hard to see how Mercedes can bridge that gap and suggested that Hamilton's team should aim for lower scores to improve their chances against Red Bull. While Hamilton didn't explicitly share the same view, he agrees that it's important to shift the team's focus to the future. After finishing third at the Canadian Grand Prix, the British driver urged his team to prioritize the development of next year's car, stating, "It's going to be a battle of development, I guess, over the rest of the season. I reckon Max's team are already working on next year's car, so we need to take our eye a little bit off the ball and focus on next year also. But yeah, happy to be up here." Hamilton's prediction about Max Verstappen's team turned out to be correct. Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, openly acknowledged this when discussing their team's recent victory in Montreal. When questioned about whether they would be focusing on the RB19, he responded, "It's about finding that balance. Obviously, because we have a lot less wind tunnel time, we have to start thinking a lot about next year. We're spinning a couple of plates at the moment, but with the regulations being stable, whatever we learn this year, we carry it into next year as well. Of course, there are things that we'll keep bringing back to this year's car, but a lot of the focus now back in the factory is already on next year." However, when asked about the cost cap penalty that Horner's team is currently facing, Sky Sports reporter Ted Kravitz raised doubts about the actual impact of the punishment. He expressed, "They've already got the advantage with this year's car. We're not even halfway through the season and already they can have the capacity and aerodynamic wind tunnel testing time, even considering the penalty for the accepted breach agreement on the cost cap to concentrate on next year's car. So, it's a virtuous circle having such a good car this year. It might end up that the cost cap breach and the penalty of 10% less wind tunnel time that Red Bull had might end up not being a penalty at all. If they can start now on next year's car, then it's not a penalty at all, is it?" Sergio Perez's recent performances have been a struggle, despite his partnership with the talented Max Verstappen. While he managed to secure 4th place in the Spanish Grand Prix, it felt somewhat underwhelming considering Red Bull's overall dominance. The Canadian Grand Prix was another opportunity, but Perez faced difficulties with pace throughout the event. Unlike Verstappen, who excels at making up positions after a tough qualifying session, Perez has been unable to deliver the same level of performance. As a result, he now trails his teammate by 69 points, raising concerns about his position within the team for the next season. Christian Horner expressed before qualifying that Perez seemed to have lost his magic touch and should focus less on winning the Drivers' Championship. He had a great start to the season. He's had a couple of rougher races, and he just needs to find that mojo again. I think actually he needs to stop thinking about the championship and just drive, because we know what he's capable of. We've seen it earlier in the year. And just take the pressure off himself. If he just frees his shoulders up a bit, it'll just come to him more naturally," Horner said. After Sergio Perez's disappointing qualifying performance at the Canadian Grand Prix, team principal Christian Horner delivered a clear message to the driver. Horner openly expressed his disappointment, expecting Perez to have achieved a higher position in the race considering the impressive speed of the Red Bull car. This comment adds extra pressure on Perez, and Horner addressed the media, discussing Perez's performance, saying, "Unfortunately for Checo, he just didn't get that first lap in on the slick tire when the circuit was in the window. Then he came back onto the inter because it was too wet for the slicks. So it was frustrating for him. However, unlike Monaco, this is a track that you can overtake at. The forecast is saying it'll be a dry race. He's a great racer and he's got a fast car. Perez is determined to make up for his disappointing qualifying outcome and regain the trust of his team principal in the next race. He expressed his eagerness to bounce back and enhance his performance, stating, "It didn't work out. I mean, when we went onto the slick, it was just the lap that it started raining. I needed a lap to get the tire in the temperature in the working range. And then it just started raining. Then we switched back to the intermediate. So it was all a bit half of a lap. One lap a bit too late to get that lap in. Well, it's going to be hard to overtake, but we will try everything. We will try everything to come through the field." Red Bull is relying on Sergio Perez to step up because, as Ted Kravitz mentioned, the team will face consequences for breaking the cost cap rule towards the end of the season. Red Bull reached an agreement with the FIA after a minor regulation breach, leading to a £6 million fine and a 10% reduction on their wind tunnel testing time. Christian Horner expressed his dissatisfaction with the severity of the punishment, emphasizing this when he said, "The more draconian part is the sporting penalty, which is a 10% reduction in our ability to utilize our wind tunnel and aerodynamic tools. I've heard people reporting today that it's an insignificant amount. Let me tell you now, that is an enormous amount. That represents anywhere between a quarter and half a second's worth of lap time. By winning the Constructors' Championship, we became victims of our own success by, in addition to that 10%, having a 5% incremental handicap compared to the second and third place teams." Despite the penalty faced by Red Bull, they continue to dominate this season, with either Max Verstappen or Sergio Perez winning every race so far. Furthermore, Ted Kravitz clarified that the reduction in aerodynamic testing time will mainly affect Red Bull's performance in the next season, suggesting that their current success remains unaffected. He shared with Sky Sports, "It's clear to me now why the upper surfaces, the side pods, and all the rest of it of the RB19 look more or less the same as the RB18. It's that Adrian Newey, Pierre Watch, and all of the people at Red Bull spent all their time over the winter on that floor. And if you're thinking about, hang on, what about cost cap aerodynamic testing restrictions? A penalty? When is that going to come in?" Well, Pierre Watch, the technical director, had an answer for me for that one on Thursday, when he said the end of the season that cut in aerodynamic testing is going to have an effect. And crucially, it's going to have an effect on next year's RB20 as well. I thought that was really interesting. So, if you're thinking that, hang on, I thought with the accepted breach of agreement of last year's cost cap, how come they've got the best car? It is going to bite Red Bull. Just not yet, and certainly not before they win this year's World Championship, which they deserve to because they've got a great car and Max Verstappen is driving brilliantly, etc, etc, etc. It certainly looks like Red Bull have a lot of planning to do if they want to continue dominating, especially with Sergio Perez underperforming in recent races. Will they overcome these obstacles and maintain their dominance? Can Mercedes catch up? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.